Welcome to the 2025 Candidates Forum for the GRF Board election. I'm Ann Peterson, the Director of Communications, and I'll be the moderator for today's forum. We're fortunate to have 3 of our 4 GRF Board election candidates here with us today. Janet Selden is running in District B. She's unopposed, and so she will be elected by acclamation. Susan Hildreth is running against incumbent Cheryl Hines in District F. So those who live in District F, you will be filling out ballots for the election. And unable to join us today because he had a prior commitment is Adrian Byram, who is running in District G. He is also unopposed, so he will also win by acclamation. Before we get going, I want to talk a little bit about sort of the procedure for how this is going to go. So each of our candidates will open this morning with a 3-minute opening remarks. We're fortunate that Adrian was able to join us in the studio, so he also will have opening remarks today. After that, we'll lift the screen and we'll start our Q&A portion. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the questions that were sent to us by you, the residents. With one exception, we received 38 emails about pickleball, so we are going to give our candidates 2 minutes on that topic. Then at the end of our Q&A session, each of our candidates will have an opportunity for closing remarks. During this forum, there are no questions that can be asked by the public, but afterwards you are welcome to come up and talk with the candidates. All right, if we're ready, we are going to start with Adrian Byram's pre-recorded opening remarks.
Hello, my name is Adrian Byram, and I live in Third Mutual on Terra Granada. Rossmore is an exceptional place to live. We are all very privileged to enjoy its beauty and most of all its community. During the 7 years my wife Carol and I have lived at Rossmore, I have greatly enjoyed participating in our community. As a member of the Third Mutual's board, on the GRF Finance Committee for 4 years, including 2 years as its chair, and as a member of Sustainable Rossmore for 6 years, including a year as its president. Before coming to Rossmore, I worked in the computer industry for over 40 years as an entrepreneur and senior executive, including 6 years as the executive VP of a publicly traded company. After retiring, I returned to university and earned a PhD in neuroethics, a combination of medical ethics and neuroscience. Those years taught me a great deal about how to run an organization successfully, how people make life-changing decisions, and most importantly, how to satisfy my customers. You, the owners of Rossmore, are the customers of the GRF. Thus, the board's primary responsibility is to ensure that your reasonable expectations are being met. We need to listen to you, to measure how well we are responding to your expectations, and to be clear about why we, the board, make the decisions we do. To be frank, I don't think we're doing a great job of this right now. So my highest priority is to find better ways for effective dialogue between you and the board. And the key word here is dialogue. We have to develop ways for the board and residents to talk to each other on a regular basis. Figuring this out will take time, we'll have to experiment, but we have to find better ways. My next priority is kind of nerdy, metrics. As the old saying goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. And right now, we really don't measure anything, let alone report those results to you. Fortunately, our new NetSuite management system unlocks the door to effective metrics. But first, we need to agree on what to measure. I will be calling on you to help us figure out what is truly important. My third priority is process. I don't have time to get into the details, but the room reservations and ABC issues show that we have problems introducing changes smoothly. As an organization, we need to learn to do this better. I am a realist, so I do not expect that all these priorities will be fully implemented during my time on the board. However, I will do my best to advance them with every decision the board makes. I look forward to meeting many of you, and most of all, helping keep Rossmore the exceptional place it is today. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Janet Selden.
Hi, everybody. I am eager to serve on the GRF board as a representative of District B because I am deeply committed to enhancing the quality of life in our Rossmore community. In recent years, there's been a growing sense of distress and frustration regarding governance, and I believe in fostering transparency, accountability, and open communication. Since moving to Rossmore in August of 2020, when we were in complete shutdown, I was so thrilled to be able to start taking painting classes and get involved in other activities. I currently serve as president of Mutual 4, now in my third year, after joining the board in 2021 as secretary. I am also on the landscape committee of Mutual 4 and hope to continue as a committee member. I believe that my experience as president of Mutual 4 will help enhance my ability to be on the GRF board. Additionally, I was on the steering committee of the Rossmore Lesbian Social Club for 3 years, worked on updating bylaws and policies and procedures, which was a grueling task. And I've also been the one who worked with room reservations for those years. I'm also a member of the Rossmore Art Association, Rossmore Advocates for Diversity, and the Democrats of Rossmore. I am committed to actively listening to the residents of District B and addressing the critical issues facing our community. My priorities include improving communication between the board and residents, advocating for infrastructure enhancements, and ensuring that essential services such as a more robust bus system meet the needs and expectations of our community. Professionally, I am a retired attorney with a strong background in nonprofit governance. I previously served on the board of the San Francisco Bay Area AIDS Legal Referral Panel for 15 years while in active practice. My legal and leadership experience, especially here at Rossmore, combined with my dedication to our community, will allow me to contribute meaningfully to the GRF board. I look forward to the opportunity to serve and collaborate in making Rossmore an even better place for all residents.
Thank you, Janet. Now we'll hear from Susan Hildreth.
Good morning, everyone. I am running for the Golden Rain Foundation Board from District F because I believe I will make a difference on the board. Although I respect the commitment of all our current board members, I am concerned that the board does not demonstrate sufficient transparency, accountability, and acknowledgement of residents' concerns. Rossmore is a wonderful community, and I want to ensure that the quality of life exceeds the expectations of our residents. I have lived in Rossmore for 10 years. Currently, I serve as the president of Mutual 28, that's entries 1112 on Ptarmigan Drive. I'm the secretary of the GRF Audit Committee. I'm the president of the Democrats of Rossmore, and I am a Contra Costa Library Commissioner, among other activities. I'm a retired librarian, and I have served at the executive level in local, state, and federal government. I've also served on nonprofit boards for local, state, and national organizations. I have extensive experience in working collaboratively with fellow board members to advance the mission of the organization that we serve. I have a master's degree in library science, and yes, you need a master's degree to be a professional librarian. Most people don't know that. And I also have a master's in business administration. I've been responsible for managing several large organizations, including the San Francisco Public Library, with an annual budget of $58 million in 2004. It's way more now. But I also initiated and managed a $106 million bond program for branch library construction and renovation. I led the California State Library with an annual budget of $75 million, as well as public library construction bond program and a cultural facilities bond program. I directed the Institute of Museum and Library Services in Washington, D.C. during the Obama administration, and yes, my agency was doged, and it makes me mad, but we had an annual budget of $250 million, providing federal funds for libraries and museums. I also served as the elected treasurer of the American Library Association with an annual budget of $50 million. My vision for Rossmore is a community that respects the diverse interests and needs of our residents. The extensive changes to room reservations do not reflect a commitment to customer service, which is essential for any successful organization. I'm concerned about the recent policy changes regarding demonstrations and political columns. The GRF board has to deal with many critical issues, and I share residents' concerns regarding insurance costs, safety, and affordability, and I know we're trying to deal with that effectively. The management of Rossmore is a complex challenge. If elected to the board, I will have a learning curve, but I will also advocate to improve the board's listening to residents, including overall satisfaction with services and facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Cheryl Hines, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Cheryl Hines, and
Cheryl, microphone.
sorry about that, guys. I'm Cheryl Hines, and I'm currently serving on the GRF board as vice president. I'm also chair of the planning committee, and I am also the liaison to our mutual presidents forum, something that I consider very important. In addition to that, I'm very involved with the Lapidary and Jewelry Club of Rossmore. I've served on Mutual 30's board, both as a vice president and secretary, and I love to play bocce ball. I have over 30 years in the public finance industry, doing bond deals for a variety of municipal projects throughout the Western region. And my academic credentials are I have an MBA from Stanford, and my BA is in human biology. So if anybody wants to chat about that later, we can talk about that. I also have spent a lot of time volunteering in animal rescue, having served for 15 years at ARF. My priorities on the board have been and will continue to be, number one, confronting our insurance crisis. I think that is absolutely critical today, and it will continue to. I also support aggressive fire mitigation efforts throughout Rossmore. I've been in advocacy for life safety enhancement projects, such as putting the new generator in at the security station and putting new cameras in there. And one of my main concerns and priorities getting on the board was to reduce our dependence on independent power agencies and water agencies by instituting conservation efforts. I think one of the things that's really important is partnering with some of our community organizations in Rossmore. We have some great organizations that have grown from the grassroots. Our Neighbors for Safer Streets, our Rossmore Emergency Response Organization, the Firewise Committee, and if I forget anybody else, I'm very sorry, the Insurance Task Force. Those are all examples of how we can proactively, as a board, work with people from the mutuals and people within the community to get things done. Thanks. One of my other priorities, of course, is instituting financial management tools, and I think we've done a really good job at that. Just on the planning committee, we now have a budget that reports on each individual project on a monthly basis, and we've instituted 5-year look-ahead planning on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. George, would you raise the screen, please? We're going to take just a couple minutes. We want to get the screen out of the light so that we can really see our candidates. Okay, so now we're going to move into our Q&A session. What we're going to do is rotate between our candidates for who answers the question first. We will start with Janet. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, our pickleball questions were off the charts, so we're going to allow our candidates 2 minutes to answer the following question. Janet, starting with you. If you support the pickleball facility by the event center, how do you justify the $4 million price tag? And if you do not support the new pickleball facility, What solution do you propose since the Creekside courts will be unplayable in a few years?
At over the double the original estimate, the project competes with more pressing needs that impact a greater number of residents. Instead of allocating such a large sum to one recreational project, I believe that GRF should prioritize critical infrastructure upgrades, such as replacing failing water and drainage pipes, restoring full bus service, and other priorities that focus on fire safety and possibly an additional exit out of Rossmore. I think the board should take another look at possible less costly solutions. I know there have been other projects on Tice Creek that have undergone reinforcement to stabilize the land and protect adjacent infrastructure. One project included the 2020 stabilization repairs here that GRF instituted, and the project involved installing riprap along the eastern bank at one site and the northern bank at another to prevent erosion and maintain the integrity of the creek banks. Keeping the existing pickleball court should be given serious reconsideration, and look at the lawn bowling site or the current medical building site outside the gate. They may prove to be less costly. Outside the gates would certainly alleviate a lot of the residents' concern about noise, overcrowded parking in the event center parking lot, and would also allow us to keep that property, which I understand is our only collateral for our existing mortgages. I do not think this is the right time for the board to approve the pickleball project behind the event center. We have yet to see the final bids. We do not know the final costs, and I hope that reconsideration will be given. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Now, I appreciate that everyone's clapping, but we do want to be sure that the candidates all get their chance. So let's do this. Let's let the candidates answer the question, then we clap, and then move on to the next. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Susan.
Oh, thank you. I don't think the pickleball facility is a black and white issue as framed in this question. Pickleball is a growing sport among all ages in our society. It is important for Rossmore to provide a safe and useful facility for current players and for the many future players who may move to Rossmore. It has been a challenge to find an appropriate site for the pickleball facility. GRF has spent much time and money on the search, aided by professional expertise. The current site adjacent to the event center has been deemed the most feasible. As a three-sided structure, it's not required to provide restrooms. I'm very concerned about the impact the new facility would have on restrooms in the event center and Dollar Clubhouse, as well as its impact on parking. Are there any other possible locations that could be used for this facility? If MOD offices are moved to the former medical center, could a portion of the Rockview area be used as the location and provide even additional courts? I know that Rossmore needs the corporation yard, but is the entire MOD area needed for that function? Is there any area around the fitness center that could be used? That was reviewed in the past, but should it be reconsidered? The cost continues to be a concern and has escalated over the years. When the facility is put out to bid in the very near future, we'll have a much better idea of the actual cost compared to the current $4 million estimate. Depending on how much of the increase we may see, we may need to reconsider the location, timing, or other factors. Although the use of revenue from the membership transfer fee, which is funding the construction, which would fund the construction of the pickleball facility, it's limited to specific purposes. What other priorities could be addressed with these funds? I am not committing to vote yes or no at this time, but I will commit to ask additional questions about this challenging project.
Thank you, Susan. Cheryl?
Well, I think that what Susan has said is correct in a lot of ways. We have to see the actual bids come in before any final decision is being made. With that being said, we've looked at a number of sites, and this seems to be the most feasible location. As far as the impact on the event center, we will have the ability to control hours of the pickleball facility, so that shouldn't be a big factor. I think that the value of adding this facility gets sort of lost in arguments about how many people are going to use it. And I think that's too bad. I think that some of the other factors involved here are that the fact that the facility will have solar panels on the roof, which will negate the requirement to put them up in the parking lot, blocking Dollar and/or the event center, is something that we should take into consideration as a plus factor on this. The facility site being close to the golf course and to a major parking lot with access to roads could make it, and we haven't, obviously, I haven't run this by the some of the emergency response people, but it could make it a really great site in the case of an emergency for something like a triage or staging type of center. With that being said, I think this is a great asset for Rossmore. I think there are a number of people involved with it that participate very strongly in the community, and I think it's a very big plus factor going forward. Of course, we need to look at the price when we get those estimates in, and of course, we may need to reevaluate portions of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. For the remaining questions, just a reminder, we will have 90 seconds. For question 2, Susan, we will start with you. There has been a lot of debate about changes for room reservations, from limiting recurring bookings to 4 times per week per club to loss of coffee service. What changes, if any, would you ask staff to explore if you are elected?
This is a challenging topic and one that most residents who I've talked with during this campaign bring up as a pain point. I think we should develop a short online survey to capture feedback from users regarding their satisfaction with their room use or their experience. We should coordinate a working group of room reservation users to provide feedback on how the new system is working and suggestions for possible revisions. I would also really like to suggest exploring an online room reservation system that could be utilized by residents and staff and make the implementation of that system a priority. This would be a great benefit for users and for staff, and of course we would want it integrated with NetSuite, and there are other priorities regarding NetSuite implementation on projects, but I think this should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl?
So I agree that room reservations has been a very thorny issue around Rossmore. I think that probably we made some mistakes in rolling out some of the policies that we did. We were able to correct and take some of those back. But there's a couple of concrete things I would like to see the board do. We've recently hired an attorney to work with the head of the ABC in Sacramento. And in doing that, we've gotten a lot of very factual information regarding those policies. I would like to see us take that one step further and get a designated person for Rossmore just to deal with our clubs as they approach the ABC for some of these day licenses. I think that getting feedback is certainly important, and we should do that. And I think we need to work with the Activities Council and some of the clubs to get some feedback on the process. I don't think at this point committing to use NetSuite is really feasible. NetSuite's number one priority is getting our financials out. And I think down the road, maybe using it as a feedback system would be something that is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet?
With all due respect, I think we could pretty much agree that what happened in December to all the clubs in Rossmore was unacceptable. There is still a lot of confusion and unnecessary time being spent juggling dates for rooms. I would ask the staff to reconsider their current system. There should be only one staff person assigned to each club to help avoid confusion. I was getting emails from people I didn't even know, and 5 different emails about 5 different contracts. It was so confusing. I believe there should be an in-person meeting like we used to have, where the entire year's contracts for rooms are discussed and finalized with each club. I think the current limitations on room reservations has been unnecessary and extremely disruptive to the clubs. Waiting for next year to implement a new system is not a great solution. The board should ask the staff to analyze what changes they made, why, and were they successful or not, all with the input of club representatives as authorized in the GRF bylaws, policy 304.2. The purpose is to establish a process for approving rules for the use of community facilities by members that use those facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to question number 3. Cheryl, we will start with you. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 issues facing Rossmore, and how would you address them?
I think the top issue will be insurance. It'll continue to be getting insurance. We don't have 100% coverage now, and I don't really think in any time in the future we're going to get 100% coverage. But what's our priority is to keep that cost as low as possible. We can do that through some of the fire mitigations efforts that we've undertaken. Being a FireWise community certainly helps. Second big issue that we can't ignore is the fact that we're going to have to replace the mod office building complex up on the hill. That gives us a lot of opportunities to restructure where our employees are throughout Rossmore, and it potentially opens up some space, especially at Gateway, that could be used for other purposes. In evaluating that, though, we have the off-site medical office building. It's been up for sale before. The sale fell through. We've been fortunate enough to be able to use the money that was held as a deposit to institute other studies for the MOD replacement. But we're going to have to look at potentially selling that. With that comes a big look at the debt capital structure of Rossmore. As has been noted earlier, it is collateral for some of our loans, and so we're going to have to look at that structure. But I think that we have the opportunity going forward to come up with some much more creative solutions in that regard.
Thank you. Janet?
Fixing aging infrastructure. I'm going to say that so many times today. Every week, somebody loses water. Somebody's manor is damaged because of leaking pipes. I know this is a huge problem and will be expensive, but water shutoffs put a real burden on our residents and could have a serious effect in fighting any potential fires. Another major issue is what I would call a vision issue. Should our focus be on the needs of our current residents or future residents? Someone took off the Rossmore website the words affordable housing. Rossmore originally was not built as a luxury resort and could still be considered a more reasonable, affordable place to live than many other places in the Bay Area. Do we need to appeal to more wealthy future buyers or focus on the needs of our current residents? Additionally, I've heard arguments that potential future residents won't move here if we don't have new pickleball courts. I think this is a false statement, as most residents I've asked over my years here say their primary reason for moving here is to be close to children and grandchildren. We also have a perfect location by being in the hub of the San Francisco Bay Area and all it has to offer. Yes, they appreciate our amenities, but that has never been the primary reason to move here. New people are still moving in every day. Our sales have picked up. In addition, there are numerous pickleball courts outside the gates that everyone has access to. Another major issue that I'm interested in is renovating the Stanley Dollar Clubhouse, which is in poor shape and doesn't comply with ADA requirements.
Janet, I'm sorry, we are at time, but during your closing remarks, please feel free to come back to this
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Susan.
Okay, thank you. What are our top 3 issues? In my mind, it's insurance, infrastructure, and affordability. Continuing to obtain some level of insurance to protect our homes, many of our biggest investments, is critical. We must continue to try to mitigate cost increases by supporting the Firewise community, removing vegetation and trees near our buildings that are fire hazards, and being as proactive as possible to harden Rossmore to fire danger. Also, in terms of infrastructure, Rossmore is an aging development. GRF must continue to maintain the infrastructure of amenities like the events center, pools, the golf courses, as well as the physical infrastructure of our roads, water, sewer lines that support our community. Rossmore has many buildings that are over 50 years old, particularly in our mutuals. Although GRF cannot require mutuals to address aging infrastructure, it's critical for MOD to share best practices with mutuals to ensure that mutuals are doing their share in maintaining their buildings. And finally, in terms of affordability, due to increased costs for GRF and the mutuals, which are heavily impacted by these insurance rates, affordability is an issue for a number of residents, and we must provide services to assist residents to remain in Rossmore, if at all possible.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Janet. How would you increase communication between the board and residents to ensure everyone feels heard and informed?
Clear and open communication between GRF board and Rossmore residents is essential for fostering trust and ensuring that all voices are heard. While GRF board meetings are open to the public, not everyone can attend. And navigating the Rossmore website for information isn't always straightforward. Many residents express frustration, often asking, why did they make these decisions? To bridge this gap, I propose that the GRF board representatives commit to attending at least 3 mutual board meetings per year within their districts. This would provide an opportunity for residents to ask substantive questions and better understand the rationale behind major decisions. I also think a good practice would be for board members to take turns posting articles in the Rossmore News on specific relevant upcoming issues, projects, and concerns. An effective avenue for open communication is holding more frequent and timely town halls hosted by board members. The recent town hall on the pickleball project demonstrated the value of direct engagement. However, such forums should be convened much earlier in the decision-making process, ensuring that residents understand the process that goes into decisions and their input is genuinely considered before key decisions are made.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, first of all, I didn't compare notes with Janet on this. I'm sorry, folks, but here we go. Open lines of communication are essential for a sense of trust and community, and here are some of my ideas. Schedule and promote regular meetings where 1 or 2 board members could meet with residents informally, just for open discussions. Initiate board member columns in the Rossmore News. If these columns were monthly, each board member could contribute just 1 column a year, and we'd skip a couple months, but it would help. Our board president could recommend that board members reach out to their mutuals in their district at least quarterly during the year, or sponsor district town halls. And finally, creating more informal and spontaneous opportunities for conversation other than what we have at the board meetings is a real goal that I'd like to achieve.
Thank you. Cheryl?
I think Adrian said it well. I think what we need to do is have more dialogue with the community. I think we try very hard to make sure all our meetings are noticed and that all our residents have an opportunity to attend those meetings and to speak at those meetings. But speaking at a meeting, there is no dialogue with the board, obviously. We can't conduct meetings that way. I think we have tried very hard to communicate with the mutuals through both the President's Forum and the Treasurer's Forum, and make sure that they have up-to-date information on what's being considered by the GRF and also what sort of mandates are coming in from state and local governments. I would be very willing to write articles. I would be very willing to attend, have more town halls. And I think the other thing that we can do is to form some additional task force to deal with some of these problems that we have, or even opportunities in our district, not just in our district, but throughout Rossmore. Again, I think that it's very hard as a board member to hear that you're not communicating when all you do is sit up here and try to understand and communicate what those issues are. It's a lot easier when you're on the outside to point the finger at the board saying there's no communication. But I do agree we need to establish more dialogue with our residents.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Susan. As a director, how would you address the rising cost of insurance and the lack of full coverage that has affected financing for prospective buyers?
Well, first I would attend insurance task force meetings to understand the opportunities and challenges that we may be facing. I respect the work of that group immensely as a mutual president. I would consider revising the timing of the insurance renewals for Rossmore in general, if there is a potential to reduce costs there. I'd also like to continue this discussion we have with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac regarding exemptions for co-ops and condos financing where full insurance coverage cannot be provided. And also this challenge is happening all over California and the nation. So I would want to work with other 55 plus communities, particularly in California, to support relevant legislation at the local, state, or federal level that would provide relief of any kind in terms of this insurance crisis.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Insurance clearly is a big issue. We're never going to be at the point where we have 100% insurance. So what do we do to get more mortgage lenders involved? I think we have to go directly to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and put pressure on them to reduce this 100% coverage. Because throughout this country, I think entities like Rossmore are going to have trouble getting anywhere near 100% coverage. I don't think moving the timing is going to generate any benefit. I think the fact that we have grown to 57 different insurers providing us pieces of our master coverage is something that should be really recognized as very, very important. We've increased the competition among these insurers, and in doing that, I think we're getting the best rates possible. A couple of things that I would encourage is one thing that's a little thing, deepen the lake as a potential fire resource. We've actually had fire crews pull water out of that lake, but doing little things like that and showcasing it to the insurers, that's the way we're going to help to keep these costs down.
Thank you. Janet?
I believe that the existing insurance task force members have done an excellent job of staying informed, working hard to impart knowledge about what it takes to keep our premiums as low as possible, and encouraging the GRF and MOD to do all that is necessary to keep our FireWise status up. As the president of Mutual 4 for the past 3 years, I can attest that I've followed the insurance issues closely and do believe that we are doing all we can on this front. We are watching and advocating for a legislative change that so far has not happened. This change, we don't know if it will ever come, but it's very frightening to think that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac even have the ability for those of us who have existing mortgages to actually pull those mortgages because we're not 100% covered. And I don't know, a lot of people don't even understand what 100% coverage means, but if we took all of Rossmore and let's just say half of it burned down, we'd be covered for that. It's if the entire of Rossmore were to burn down, we would not be 100% covered. And I just think it's so unfair. It's an unfair system that we have to deal with and pay for.
Thank you. Cheryl, you'll start with the next question. In light of the current economic situation, what is your approach to being fiscally responsible with the coupon, but maintaining the amenities and services that we have here in Rossmore?
I think, especially in terms of today's environment, this is a really excellent question. One of the things that we've done, and that I was thinking back on this question and how I was going to answer it, is I am really, really glad that we have been responsible and we haven't deferred maintenance on a lot of projects. We recently purchased 2 new golf irrigation pumps. Those are sizable pieces of equipment that irrigate our golf course. I'm glad we've got that over and done with and we don't have to deal with it in today's environment. We've done things like put the new pool roof over Tice. We've instituted some of the golf bridge replacement programs. With that being said, we've got increases going on the other side of things. We've got 8.5% increases in water. So in response, we've taken out a lot of the turf. We have completed the median re-landscaping. Employee expenses, those just continue to grow. And I think although I think we run really lean here, obviously that's an area that's out of our control. On the other side of things, I think we have to maximize our potential revenues. This year, we took a look at the facilities usage fee, the FUF, which is applied to people who are leasing facilities in Rossmore, and we increased that by 60%.
Cheryl, I'm afraid we are at time, but again, if you would like to address this in your closing remarks, that would be great.
Okay, great.
Janet.
I do not think that this is the best time to be introducing new amenities to Rossmore, given the current economic situation. We need to pay for the maintenance of the clubhouses, especially Stanley Dollar, and other amenities and services first. Costs continue to rise within all parts of Rossmore, including MOD and GRF, their salaries and benefits. I don't know how we can absorb all of these rising costs and new amenities as well without increasing the coupon, which is the major concern of most residents. As a new board member, I want to have a better understanding of GRF's internal costs, and I believe that a fiscal and operating audit should be available in order to see if we can cut any costs. I also encourage residents to join committees or their board of directors of their mutuals so that they have a better understanding of what goes into the cost of their coupons and to see if there's ways to lower their costs. People are very confused about what is in the coupon and what it pays for. And people who I know who are very smart and don't understand the difference between all our different layers of governance and the costs that occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Susan?
I think this is one of the most difficult challenges in serving as a board member. I would do my best working with the board members and staff to balance increasing costs, yet keeping up maintenance of current amenities and services. I would prioritize expenses that relate to safety and security of our residents. I would also try to prioritize amenities and services supporting those that are used by the greatest number of residents. I would research the best practices from similar senior communities to see if there are models we could consider to manage costs and continue to provide services. I think there may be very difficult choices we have to make, but the long-term fiscal health of our community is a primary consideration for all residents. And I just think that, as Janet was saying, we have to continue to communicate over and over again what's in the GRF portion, what's in the mutual portion, and help people understand how we arrive at these costs and how we're doing the best we can, even at the mutual level, too, to manage those costs.
Thank you. Janet, we'll start with you on the next question. New statewide fire maps show parts of Rossmore are at high risk for fire. What can Rossmore do to continue to stay safe from wildfires?
We all need to stay informed about our FireWise program here at Rossmore. GRF is doing an outstanding job of fulfilling the requirements, which enhances our safety and enhances our ability to get lower insurance premiums. The Shaded Fuel Break project is a great example. Thanks to a $3.1 million grant obtained in June of 2022 by ConFire from the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, both GRF and the City of Walnut Creek worked with regional elected officials to advocate for this grant. These kind of partnerships, these kind of grants, and knowing what's available out there to help us will go a long way. That project removed excess dry vegetation from a strip of land above the valley, encircling about 85% of Rossmore. The break also will include some portions of land stretching into Lafayette. California is a drought state. Though we may not currently be in a drought, East Bay reservoirs hold less than 14 months' supply of water, and rates continue to rise annually. We reduce landscape water use each year through lawn reductions, increased irrigation checks, and constant upgrades to our irrigation technology.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, as has been noted, Rossmore has made great progress with certification as a FireWise community, and we want to continue to support these efforts as well as many that are going on. The work above around Rossmore on the fund on that grant was absolutely terrific, and it was near my mutual, so it was great. Not that it wasn't good for everybody, but we have to make sure that Rossmore common properties and mutuals are implementing the 0-foot clearance policy of no vegetation with 5 feet within 5 feet of building. This is tough. A lot of people love their plants, and we're doing the best we can to have a better approach than having a plant desert, but it's really important to consider that. We have to remove dangerous trees or other vegetation from our common properties and the mutuals. We want to make sure that all local hydrants and also East Bay mud hydrants and East Bay mud water supplies are working effectively. We must ensure that fire monitoring cameras are working in order, and we have to continue to be diligent in the fire hardening activities here in Rossmore. But overall, we've made great strides, and I just hope we can continue to invest in the fire hardening that we've been doing.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Well, first of all, I would just like to point out that the first part of this question is a little misleading. I don't think the statewide fire maps show that Rossmore is at a high risk of fire. We tend to fall in a lower range, so let's dispel that notion right off the bat. We have instituted a lot of really strong fire mitigation efforts, getting recognized as a FireWise community, the Shaded Fuel Break. All of those are really important considerations. We have a great relationship with our partners in the fire protection services, both with ConFire and with CAL FIRE. And yes, we have a new state mandate coming around that will or may require that we establish an ember-free or ember-resistant zone around our houses. I am working on potentially putting together a task force which would use our FireWise committee and also get some members of all our mutuals which are struggling with this, as well as the GRF and our outside partners to try to come to some solutions for all of Rossmore. I don't think this is something that gets passed down to the mutuals per se, but we have to address it as a community and also pursue financing to get it completed.
Thank you. Susan, we'll start with you for the next question. What are your thoughts about a second exit out of Rossmore? And considering it could cost tens of millions of dollars, how would Rossmore pay for it?
Well, thank you for that question. It is important to have a second exit for emergencies, but it's not needed for daily use. It often comes up as a topic, and I know it's on residents' minds. We need to continue to work on alternative routes to Lafayette and Alamo. The Lafayette route is paved, so it's somewhat of a better option than the Alamo routes, but the Alamo routes are not paved, and negotiations are complicated with many partners to try to get even one of those exits in better shape for our community. And particularly a landowner who's owned some of that property there is not willing to lease or sell the property and is a notorious difficult partner here in our community. Funding in our county. Funding is a huge challenge. I mean, exploring grants, I don't know what I would try to figure out what was out there, but it's probably a long shot. I was thinking that for every $1 million in cost, that would be about $150 per unit. Could we set aside a portion of membership transfer fee annually to build a funding source and match a contribution from residents? These are just ideas in terms of dealing with a huge amount of money. It's a critical issue for most residents, and I would want to ensure that we're doing as much as possible to develop these exits.
Thank you. Cheryl?
What is more important than spending a lot of money on a second exit out is making sure that we have the existing capacity, and we do, to get the emergency vehicles into Rossmore. And we have those different right-of-ways currently set up. Susan's right, getting that road built up above Eagle Ridge probably is going to be difficult, if not impossible. It's a private developer that owns it. It's also his residence that's up there. I don't think he really wants or cares to have a road out of Rossmore running through his property. Some of the other potential ingresses and egresses also are not owned by Rossmore. So we don't really have the ability to go build on that property unless, of course, we purchase it, which drives the costs way up. I want to point out that our evacuation map that we currently have in Rossmore has become a role model for the state. And it will sequence the evacuations out of Rossmore so that people don't have to be as concerned about getting stuck in a situation like we saw down in LA.
Thank you. Janet?
Yeah, I want to echo what both these women had to say. I agree with all of it. It would be a great idea, but the costs are probably prohibitive at this time. I like Susan's idea about looking for grants. So I think residents do feel like safety might be more important of an issue than new amenities. And I know that GRF has looked into additional easements out of Rossmore, but again, that owner has not been willing to let us use it. I do believe the board should continue to seek solutions to this problem, and I think having only one way out is problematic. And I understand there are a few spots that are used only for the fire trucks and other equipment. It may be possible that residents can utilize those in the case of an evacuation, but only if the police instruct residents to do so. So in all circumstances, residents should wait for instructions from the police department before trying to evacuate Rossmore.
Thank you. Cheryl, we'll start with you for the next question. Do you support possibly moving the Mutual Operations Department and other staff to the old medical building outside the gate? If so, why? And if not, what do you propose for fixing the rundown MOD building?
This is a really big question. and I'm happy to tackle it. I don't support moving the offices to the medical office building outside of campus, and that's for a couple of reasons. One is the repairs that would be required to that building in order to move staff are very costly. And the other thing, just dealing with things like parking. So what do I support? I support looking into rebuilding on the existing site, maybe moving it slightly, and that way we can consolidate some of our employees, moving them out of Gateway. I think what's really critical here, no matter what we do, is making sure that it's easily accessible to residents, that there is parking, and that there is efficiency of services to be provided. The other thing we're going to have to look at is what do we do with that medical office building? We've had it on the market before. It's been up for sale. The sale fell through. And I think we need to look at maybe putting it back on the market to produce some revenues to fund this project. But that entails, again, as I've said before, looking at our overall debt capital structure and making some important decisions in that regard as well.
Thank you, Janet.
Well, I think that the board has to decide what is more important, a new pickleball facility or a new mod building. I do not see how we can afford to do both. I think there should be more of an analysis of the space at the current MOD location in order to determine whether a major renovation or even a new building there could accommodate MOD's needs. I really think that would be a better location. I would like to see revisiting the possibility of using the medical center for pickleball courts in the future, thus avoiding having to sell it, since it's our only building that we can use for collateral in the event of an emergency or an event that we need to borrow money for some other reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
I think it's a complex decision, as Cheryl mentioned. So I would say I don't think moving the mod offices to the medical building should be off the table if the cost for that renovation is feasible. I think, first of all, the MOD office space is barely suitable for staff, and and folks work there all the time. Residents go there. I think the medical building location is adjacent to Rossmore. Of course, I don't think it's too far. It would require regular bus routes, so our residents could provide access to the facility, but many of us drive over there several times a day. So I think the relocation is not that big of a problem. Rossmore definitely needs a corporation yard, so we have to maintain that kind of facility in the Rockview area. But could we use the space freed up by the demolition or renovation of mod buildings for a sports facility, for other purposes, or for the industrial kitchen that we need to make sure we get different food options here? The timing of the decision on this relocation impacts other decisions the board is also considering. So I would want to make sure we had a clear sequencing and timeline for these decisions. It's critical to know what one impacts the next.
Thank you. Janet, we'll kick off the next question with you. I miss having the bus on the weekends, but know it's hard to find bus drivers. What ideas do you have for transportation in Rossmore?
Well, this is not my expertise, though I was a school bus driver when I was in college. So I looked up in Contra Costa County that individuals seeking bus driver training have many options through local transit agencies and educational programs. These programs and agencies should be tapped regularly to recruit new bus drivers. There's County Connection based in Concord. There's an AC Transit program providing paid training programs for aspiring young bus operators. And there is the San Pablo Economic Development Corporation and the California Highway Patrol has an educational program for bus drivers. So I think there's many locations that we should be going to and letting them know of our needs for bus drivers. And I'm also curious to know if the Rossmore Foundation is still subsidizing Uber rides on the weekends, and if so, I believe that the GRF should contribute to that effort.
Thank you. Susan?
This is something that a lot of residents want to have reinstated. And I hate to bring this up, but I have to. Could we use volunteers to provide these services? I realize there are liability issues, union issues with suggestion, but are there any innovative approaches that could address these potential barriers? And what is our challenge with finding bus drivers? Janet has a whole list of places to go. But do we offer a competitive compensation rate? Residents have told me that they would be willing to pay more for their GRF portion of the coupon if it was used to reinstate the bus service on weekends. And finally, we have experimental self-driving vehicles that are currently being driven by personnel for transportation between Gateway and the fitness center. I'm not sure the scope or extent of that project. I probably should have researched it, but I thought those vehicles were supposed to be self-driving at some point. So, could we experiment with self-driving cars, possibly just limited to Rossmore, for weekend transportation? So that may be out there, but I wanted to bring it up.
Thank you. Cheryl?
These are a lot of very interesting ideas here. First of all, we are taking this issue up at this week's planning committee. So I would urge everybody to take a look at that very preliminary study that we've done. But also, please send in your comments. I really would like to hear from people about both anything that's good about the system, but also about the frustrations. I think that, that song about the wheels on the bus go round and round. Well, I think the wheels on this bus have fallen off a long time ago. I think it's an old, antiquated system, and I think we have to look beyond just going out there and hiring more bus drivers to drive more routes. I see that bus sometimes come up Ptarmigan, and it picks up one person. And then I'll be out 2 hours later, I see another bus come up there, and it picks up one person. That's not an efficient way to run a system. We've taken a look at trying to negotiate some specific arrangement with Uber and Lyft. That hasn't worked out, but we have to really keep trying to move this system, into this century. Thanks.
Thank you. Susan, we'll start with you for this one. I've read in some of the articles by the candidates that they want the board to re-examine the demonstrations policy and no political columns in the paper. I support free speech, but I worry too about safety and spending coupon money to fact-check those columns. What do you think is the answer to this dilemma?
Well, first, I'd like to touch on the demonstration policy. I think that we should review the demonstration policy to see its effectiveness now that it's been revised. Are alternate demonstration locations being approved? Are the sign requirements being enforced? I think we should review the policy for its effectiveness and revise if necessary. Ann Peterson made a compelling case regarding liability arising from columns, impact on advertisers, potential suits for defamation, and plagiarizing. I understand the board's concern for liability and their fiduciary responsibilities, but I would just ask, could we consider going back to a pattern that worked for a period of time, having one column per week from various groups? Because fact-checking would still be a problem, could we offer internships to St. Mary's or other local college students to do this fact-checking? If there was a cost, possibly clubs or individuals would support the fact-checking. I would want to try to explore alternatives to reinstate the columns and address the board's concerns regarding liability and impact on revenue.
Thank you. Cheryl?
I would also support getting feedback on the demonstration policy on what works. It appears to be working very well, but I would like to hear from the actual people who are out marching around. As far as the political columns, that's not etched in stone. And certainly if someone comes to us with a viable option for mitigating the cost of the fact-checking and protecting Rossmore against the liability, then certainly we're going to consider that. So I think that, open to discussion we remain, and that's very important in this regard.
Thank you. Janet?
Well, I think the change in policy was an overreach. I do think that the very few incidences cited as the reasons for the change were overblown. By demanding prior approval of our signage, they are effectively attempting to censor messages before they are even seen. This level of control is not only condescending, but also sets a dangerous precedent. What's next? Banning public criticism altogether? Many of us have spent our lives participating in political discourse, shaping policy, and championing causes that matter. To now have these discussions stripped down from our own publication is a blatant attempt to suppress differing viewpoints and limit access to diverse perspectives. In order to not have an increase in the costs, there are some very acceptable disclaimers that can be utilized in the newspaper. Disclaimers for fact-checking opinion pieces in newspapers help clarify the distinction between subjective views and verified information. Here are some common and effective examples. A general disclaimer. The views expressed in this opinion piece are those of the author and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Rossmore News. While facts may be presented as accurate, readers are encouraged to independently verify claims. Another one is called
Janet,
fact check.
I'm sorry, we are at time, but again, we'll have time at the end. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, so Cheryl, we'll start with you on this question. The recent food and beverage study suggested Rossmore find an operating partner for food service. Do you support this move? Why or why not?
I think that structuring this with an operating partner is a really good financial move. I think that's for two reasons. One is it gives us a partnership with the operator, which allows us for more ongoing input with that operator and control over what's being offered. It also gives us a share of the potential revenues. It also reduces any upfront costs associated with adding amenities. Now, by saying we want an operating partner, I want to make it clear that we're not talking about wiping out completely our existing food and beverage options. We're simply trying to change the relationship with the person that is providing those services. So yes, I would definitely support an operating partnership as opposed to a straightforward lease agreement, which we currently have.
Thank you. Janet?
Since the Creekside restaurant lease is up at the end of the year, this is a good time to reevaluate and see if we can get some additional food service at Rossmore. Since the board is still studying this, I would advocate, in the meantime, to just get a contract for a nice, high-quality coffee machine, a high-quality vending machine with some sandwiches and fruit and other snacks to put in the Redwood Room. Residents get tired of waiting for so long for studies to be done and permits to be obtained. This study started a while back, and I think everyone was in agreement. It would be really great for those of us who go from the art studio to a meeting at Gateway to a movie at Peacock to be able to get something to eat where we don't have to drive off the gate. So I really wish we could offer a temporary solution while these studies go on so that residents feel like, we're listening to them and doing something that could alleviate the problem in a temporary way.
Thank you. Susan?
Great idea, Janet. I think this is a reasonable approach to provide more and varied food options for Rossmore. I think our biggest problem, as noted at the food service town hall, was the lack of an industrial kitchen. It seems logical that we may need a partner or want a partner with some skin in the game to invest with us in building that kitchen to support current and/or new food venues. The use of a specialized consultant, as we're doing in this endeavor, is critical as they bring specialized expertise to the situation. If we work with a partner, we must identify a reliable partner and develop very detailed agreements in terms of responsibilities and investments. Probably many models that we could look at. There are models in other senior communities we could look at. The current Creekside operator's lease ends in December. So as GRF will be releasing a request for proposal for these services soon, and the Creekside operator could apply for that, I'm concerned that issuing the RFP in the spring gives us limited time to make a transition before year end. But having operated cafes and libraries over the years, the integrity and the agreements with the contractor are absolutely critical.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Janet. The board used to focus on water conservation, but we don't hear about it much anymore. What efforts do you support for water conservation in Rossmore?
Well, I believe one of the most important things we could do is fix our aging water pipes. Prevent water main leaks would be very helpful. That being said, I think the landscape department has done a wonderful job implementing lawn conversions on GRF and mutual properties. Not only does replacing lawn result in a reduction of water, but also in a reduction of our water bills and landscape costs for not having to mow and fertilize the lawns. I understand there's an interest in replacing the lawn and putting in some kind of artificial turf on the lawn bowling greens that would result in similar savings. I would definitely support that effort as well. There's a California law that's coming into effect in our very near future that will prevent us from watering non-functional grass. We should all be moving in the direction of more lawn conversions and replacing the lawns with hardscape and drought-resistant plants.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, we must be prepared for drought years. Although we've had a little relief, they will be back. We must continue to replace turf with drought-resistant plants with bubbler irrigation systems that use much less water than spray systems. And I know we're doing this in GRF for common properties as well as the mutuals. We want to leverage any opportunities for water conservation at the golf course or other appropriate areas in Rossmore, and I know we have been doing that over the years, and we need to continue that. Even though our focus on water conservation has lessened in light of our fire concerns, it is still critical because the cost of water rises annually, and we must try to address that consistently.
Thank you. Cheryl?
This is one of my favorite issues. We have, I think, right now, we've plucked the low-hanging fruit. We've done the median conversions. We've rolled back some of the tee box space at the golf course. So we've done a lot of water conservation, and that's obviously very, very important. As I said earlier, I think we ought to look at deepening the lake at the golf course to provide additional resources for irrigation. And I want to highlight the current work that we're doing with the Lawn Bowling Club to replace that lawn with artificial turf. In last year's budget, or in this year's budget, we are projecting a water use of $36,000 to water those. Yes, there'll be some cost associated with purchasing the artificial turf, but in addition to that, we have fertilizer and turf maintenance that we'll no longer require, and that's about $25,000. We've already, in this year's capital budget, removed the need to purchase a $40,000 piece of equipment for green rolling that was to be used up there. So all of these things I think are really important. And I think then eventually we're going to have to look at next steps such as water reclamation and water recycling as well.
Thank you. Susan, we'll start with you for this question. I know mutuals and GRF are separate, but are there ways you think that they could work together better?
Yes, I think they could. I think we could identify infrastructure needs that most mutuals and GRF may have in common. Particularly, we want to collaborate on some of these major projects. And a good example that we're working on right now is replacement of exterior electrical panels, boxes, and also interior electrical panels, particularly in many of our mutuals. If we could save money on aggregating supply acquisition and labor contracts, if we had a more collaborative view as opposed to our 22 mutuals doing all this separately and having different deals with the contractors and who's doing what for this or that. So let's get together and save some money for all of us. You know, we are making progress on an agreement between GRF and the mutuals for specific service level expectations from MOD and other GRF services that mutuals depend on. And this has been a very positive project, and I see it as really clarifying our expectations and being beneficial for cooperation in the future. I also think the NetSuite implementation with transparent and accurate financial records for mutuals is a huge step forward.
Thank you. Cheryl?
So a couple of things here. I think NetSuite's going to make a huge difference in the lives of our mutuals. I think finally having some accurate and the ability to use cash flow modeling, that type of thing, is going to be really key. I'm currently working with a couple of the mutuals within my district to try to approach the city about the tree ordinance. It's so hard, and I realize there are valid reasons for this, to cut down trees, even if they are diseased and or in danger of falling or a fire hazard. And we need to work with the city in that regard. I'd like to also see us put together a task force to deal with things like the Zone 0 requirements to remove the plants away from buildings and to also remove non-functional grass. If you look at a lot of the political statements that wrap around some of these mandates, they talk about providing financial assistance. I think that's one area where we as Rossmore, with the GRF combined with the mutuals, have some clout to approach our public officials and say, these mandates are great for keeping us all safe, but we need to see some of the dollars coming in here to Rossmore in order to, affect those mandates. Thanks.
Thank you. Janet?
Well, of course, I think we should always be looking at ways that we can be more efficient, find ways to save on costs. And as the president of Mutual 4, I've been in discussions of this kind, and there have been suggestions by MOD, for instance, and the accounting department, that if all the mutuals were using the same collection agencies that we hire to collect delinquencies, it would be more efficient and save the staff time and money. If we all use the same banks, the same thing applies. We should be exploring ways such as these that will result in cost saving and saving staff time. I've also been told that there's some issues when there, as Cheryl mentioned, tree removal issues that could affect more than one mutual, could affect a mutual and GRF property. You know, these trees are not perfectly aligned on certain boundaries. Can we work more cooperatively and the mutuals not being so defensive? Well, that's not on my mutual. I'm not going to deal with that. No, we should be more cooperative because we are all in this together and we all need to look at cost savings. I do think more education by the GRF for new board members about lines of communication, governance, and information sharing would be helpful. And
Janet, we are at time, but
Okay.
I've got really good news for everybody. There's not enough time for any more questions, so now I'm going to kick it over to you. So you guys are going to have an opportunity to do your closing remarks. So Janet, we'll start with you. If you'd like to continue there, you can, but you have 2 minutes now for closing remarks.
Well, the last thing that I was going to say is I am concerned about how much staff time goes into having to attend mutual meetings. I mean, honestly, we have so many mutuals and so many meetings, and I just think about all the other important things that, Euron has to do in a day, and here he is sitting in these hours and hours long board meetings. I mean, I would be happy as the president of Mutual 4 if I just got a written report from him that I could actually just, read to the board, or rotate certain staff members into our board meetings. A lot of things we hear, staff is overstretched. Staff doesn't have time to do all these things you want us to do. So let's look cooperatively at how we can help them as well. And I think if they're not in so many meetings, maybe they can help us get some work done that we need to get done. Not that they don't, but you know what I'm saying. And I just am really, I'm excited to learn and excited to be on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the GRF board, Ann Peterson, Deborah Rose, and all the audience members who choose to spend their valuable time here today. Thank you very much, and thanks to the other candidates for sharing their views with us as well. Just a quick correction. When I made the mention about automating the room reservation system, I was under the impression that everything had to be integrated with NetSuite. And if it doesn't, I'm sure we can find a program out there that works. And the other thing I would say is, could we have read access only to the calendar? Nothing, could we possibly have that? So that's my pitch. But why am I running now? I've been interested in serving on the GRF board for several years, but I have not done so because my Mutual 28, had a 3-person board. A 3-person board is challenging, as you often have 2 members with strong viewpoints, and the person in the middle is always ticking off one of their colleagues. When I became president of the board, we asked our residents to expand the board to 5 members, and they approved it. We have more voices for discussion and more folks to share the workload. We have a strong board with 4 committed members, so I feel I could step away, which I would have to do if I am elected. Although the GRF board and the mutual boards have unique and separate relationships, if I am elected, I will offer to visit all the mutuals in District F on a regular basis, if they're interested, of course. I'd want to keep in touch with the interests and concerns of our residents. I know that not all the decisions the board makes will be popular with all the residents, but I want to be able to explain why decisions are made so that residents will understand, even if they don't agree. So I hope you will vote for me for the District F representative when you receive your ballots soon after April 11th. Vote as soon as possible, mail back in the postage paid envelope, or drop in one of the white Rossmore mailboxes. All ballots must be in by May 1st. And remember, 1 vote per unit, per manor. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Susan just made my job at the end a lot easier. Cheryl?
That's a good reminder of the rules. I think what's really important today is to note the wide range of issues that we've had to deal with and discuss here today. Dealing with all those issues requires a lot of time and effort, and I'm sure that all of us are willing to do that. But I think especially in terms of this current economic environment, it also really needs a business brain. I think we have to be analyzing every single expense that we have here in Rossmore. And I think then we also have to look very closely at enhancing things on the revenue side where that is something that we can do. We have a lot of mandates flying at us from the state. I think it's really important to work in concert with our mutuals in order to deal with this as a community. We have a lot more strength if we're together with our mutuals than if we're fighting, 23 individual mutual battles. I think that also we have to work on our transportation system. I too am bothered by the condition of Dollar. I think it's tragic that beautiful facility is in such disrepair, and I'd like to see us at some point work on that. I think the important thing here too is to be able to separate what exactly the GRF role is in this community. We had a lot of discussion about aging infrastructure, and I want to point out that yes, Rossmore itself has to take care of its existing infrastructure, and that is aging. But a lot of the infrastructure around us is provided by other entities, East Bay Mud, PG&E, those types of things, and forming partnerships with them to maximize the renovation of those resources and mitigating the disruption to our community is something that's really important as well.
Thank you. Janet, Susan, Cheryl, we thank you very much for taking your time today to answer everyone's questions. So Susan did steal my thunder a little, but I do want to remind everyone that while Janet and Adrian have been elected by acclamation, if you live in District F, you will be receiving a ballot on or around April 11th. It is one ballot per manor, so if you're married, you have to share. But please do make sure that you get those ballots back by end of day Thursday, May 1st. The new board will then be seated following the annual meeting on Monday, May 12th at 9:30 here in Peacock Hall, and it will also be on Zoom. Thank you again for all taking the time to come out today.